Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. It's Paula from the 411 on manifesting. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all had an amazing weekend. It is a little colder this weekend and we did get some snow. And, I just want to point out, I don't always want to start these off talking about the weather. I was married to a farmer for many, many years, and that's all we talked about was the weather. And my 9 to 5 job is in the oil field. And of course, that's all we do is talk about the weather at work as well. So that's why I always talk about the weather. I'm trying to get away from that though. But I do hope that you all had an amazing weekend. I don't know if anybody was able to see the moon this weekend. It's like a blood moon. I think it was yesterday, and it's kind of like yesterday today, and there's an eclipse going on. All kinds of crazy, crazy emotional kind of energies. Really good energy for manifesting, good energy for setting intentions. Of course, full moon is always about release. So getting rid of what doesn't serve you, and maybe a burning ceremony or a bearing ceremony or anything like that. I just hope you had a great, great weekend. I am super stoked to talk about the topic we're going to talk about today in this vlog, which is the someday syndrome. If you've never heard of the someday syndrome, I suggest you get on YouTube and type it in. There's quite a few different channels and vlogs that sort of explain about it. I came across the someday syndrome probably a few years ago. I actually have a book on it somewhere. If you know me, I have books on everything, but I do have a book on it, and I think I've read it like a couple times. It's pretty good, and it's sort of something that I like to remind myself about every once in a while, because the someday syndrome is when you tell yourself you're going to do something someday. Someday I'm going to lose the weight. Someday I'm going to exercise regularly. Someday I'm, going to do this before I start dating again. Someday I'm going to start my own business. That kind of thing. And what the someday syndrome does, it does a couple things actually. But the first one it does, and this is a really big one, is that it lets us off the hook. Like, we don't have to really be accountable for achieving a goal when we say that we're going to do it someday. Because we're not saying that we're not going to do it. We're just saying that we're not going to do it right now. And right now can turn into years, as a lot of us know. I'm guilty of that too. So that's really sort of that's really something that I have struggled with in my life, is putting things off a lot. I am a huge procrastinator. I'm getting better at it, but I am a huge procrastinator with things that, like, personally with me, not ever to do with anything else. I never want to let anybody else down. I do like to honor my commitments and such. I do not like to honor the commitments to myself. I have a really hard time with that one. And I don't know if some of you can relate to that. And even regarding your health, that tomorrow I'm going to not have sugar. Or, the next 3 days I'm going to walk a mile a day, that kind of thing. So I have a hard time kind of committing to myself with someday syndrome. But so someday syndrome, again, lets us off the hook for not having to do our goal. And the other thing that someday syndrome does is that it does not hold us accountable. Because again, we're not saying that we're not going to do it. So I find that I used the someday syndrome a lot when people would say, "Oh, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. How's that going that you were talking about doing?" Something to do with that, especially if it's like a close friend that I've maybe shared, a goal or an intention with. And I'm like, "Oh, I haven't got to it yet, but someday I will." That kind of thing. So you're not saying that you're not going to do it, because that is almost an admission of failure. You're saying someday you will do it. But nobody does it in a someday syndrome. I mean, sometimes you might start it, but it's not a follow-through tactic to use with someday syndrome. We really don't get to that someday with it. And I find that it's very, very frustrating at times because it's just getting started, right? And if any of you follow my Witchy Wears page on Facebook, I always like to put this little phrase out. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I find that so true with a someday syndrome topic, because even 5 minutes a day towards one of your goals will count towards starting. It gets you out of that someday syndrome. So I'm going to give you, for instance, I have a closet in my home that I cannot open. If I do, I risk injury, possibly death. If I open that closet, there is 10 years of memories and old crap that's going to fall out into my hallway. Every time I walk by that neatly closed door, I know what's behind it. I know. So when I walk by it, I actually get very, very anxious. And I think to myself, oh my goodness, what if I had company over and maybe I had forgot to put a hand towel out? And they're like looking at me going, hey, can I grab a towel? Something like that. Anyway, that's just like one example of something that really, really stresses me out. So last weekend, I decided to put on some armor and open that closet. And it was terrible. It was actually worse than I remembered it being. But what I did is I thought, I'm going to put 5 minutes into this. Even if I have to leave it on the floor, I'm going to put 5 minutes into this. I'm going to maybe sort some piles. I'm just going to get a trash bag, sort of see what's on top, and go through it that way. So what happened is I did sit down with it. I opened the door. I got out of the way and I let things fly. And then I sat down and decided to organize a bit. And honestly, I ended up sitting there for 45 minutes. It was just getting started. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It wasn't that I, was lazy or anything like that. It had just got so overwhelming that I didn't really know how to even start it. And that's all I had to do. I just had to open that door, let her fly, and sit down and start it. And I did. And it's cleaned out. It looks so amazing. And every time I walk by it, I'm not anxious anymore. I probably have, I don't know why I have an issue with like jam-packed, unorganized closets, because I'm not really an unorganized person per se. So that's really something I'm going to work on, because I have more than one in my home. That was just the worst one. So we got that out of the way. But I mean, if you have a goal of something that you want to do, whether it's exercise or diet, I find too that women with small kids, this was one that I did when my kids were small, is when my kids are older, I'll do this. But you don't have to wait for your kids to be older, because that is just an excuse. And once your kids leave the house, what excuse are you going to use then? You use someday again. So I find that even getting started on a goal for 5 minutes, I mean, even if you just do the 5 minutes, that's totally fine. But chances are that you won't. I know that I've been using this in my life the last couple of weeks because I knew I was going to talk about this today. So I've actually been using this towards some things that I really want to do for myself. One is writing. I really like to write. So 5 minutes a day. I just start at 5 minutes a day. Just sit down, clear this space in my calendar in my evening and sit down. 5 minutes is turning into 45 minutes. 5 minutes turned into an hour and a half one time. So, it's really just getting started to do that. Same with exercise. 5 minutes to exercise is nothing. Like if anybody was told that they had to exercise for 5 minutes, just 5, not 55, not, half an hour, 5 minutes, I'm sure that they wouldn't have a problem doing that. But what happens when you start your exercise, even if you have a timer that says 5 minutes, and that's fine. But what happens is once you start, you actually keep going longer. You're like, I can go 10 minutes. Maybe I can go 20. It really motivates you just to get started doing that. It's such an amazing process. So I would really like you to do some homework for yourselves. I would like you to write down 3 things that you have told yourself that you will do someday. And then I would like you to take 5-minute action plan on each one of those things. Or if that's too overwhelming, pick one of those things and do a 5-minute action plan on it and get yourself started. It's really, really empowering. It's really empowering. I think that it can kind of depress us sometimes when we say someday we're going to do something, because we know that maybe we've been saying someday for a really long time, and it kind of makes our goals shrink. If that's a good word for it. So give it a shot. Give it a shot. 5 minutes. If you want to share and comment what you're going to start with your someday syndrome goals, I would love, love, love to hear them. Of course, mine was cleaning out that damn closet, which I got done. If you have a damn closet like that in your house, or a damn room, do that. I would encourage you. 5 minutes. You'll go longer. It's amazing. Thank you so much for watching today's vlog. This was a real fun one for me, something I really wanted to talk about for a while. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if nobody tells you this week, I love you. Have an amazing Monday, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.